For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Shannon de Rehove. Dr. Nick Eberl, Brand-O-Vation and Linked Income CEO, joins me in studio to discuss South Africa's reputation as a brand in the current economic climate. Welcome, Dr. Nick.
Good morning.
Now, you are interested in deciphering South Africa's image as it is currently and how it should be. What have you discovered about South Africa as a brand?
Well, I've been tracking South Africa's brand image basically for 25 years. And the model that I'm applying is actually called archetypal branding, which deciphers the personality types, the archetype of country brands. And for South Africa, we've noticed a very interesting evolution from the archetype of the outlaw during apartheid to the archetype of the caregiver during Nelson Mandela's presidency, then to the archetype of the orphan, when we had so much bad news about crime, about disempowerment, about disease, the AIDS epidemic and so on. And then with the 2010 World Cup coming on, the archetype changed, and that was a huge opportunity to really portray the positive news. And unfortunately now with the latest events, we are sliding back into the archetypes, the image of the outlaw, which is obviously not the right image to portray.
Now, The Economist magazine, in a recent article titled "Cry the Beloved Country Sad South Africa," described the country as sad. What do you believe should be done to reverse the declining fortunes of Africa's leading economy?
Well, I think we should really take note from the best practice case studies around the globe, where countries deliberately decided to change their brand image, very much like Germany, that obviously had a negative brand image ever since the war and was branded as the ruler. And then really had a deliberate campaign, the Land of Ideas campaign, to change the brand image to the creator, to really attract investors to what they called the Land of Ideas. Very much like the USA with Barack Obama, that again changed it from the negative perceptions of the ruler, interestingly, to the archetype of what it really is. It's an explorer brand. And then South Korea, very interestingly, that recently launched a campaign called Hidden Champions, where they looked into who are really the drivers, the excellent drivers of the economy. They called them hidden champions, and they are profiling their hidden champion businesses globally.
Now, you note that a country's reputation not only drives consumer decisions in purchases, but several other significant decisions as well. What are these?
Well, basically, when other countries look at a country's brand image, there's a whole facet of components that make up their perceptions, from tourism to exports to governance. And those decide the hosting of big events, for example, obviously the FIFA World Cup. If we ever want to host the Olympics, and we can do so, by the way, profitably and can create, but then that is really dependent on the perceptions. Companies deciding where to set up their international head offices. Obviously, even talent coming out. We've seen the brain drain going out from this country to other parts of the world to attract talent, critically important. And even in terms of strategic alliances between countries, even donor organizations like the UN deciding where to invest their funds. Country image is critically important.
Now, during the hosting of the 2010 Soccer World Cup, South Africa's national brand image improved significantly. This has since been undone. What can the country do to stem the negative tide and reverse losses in an international reputation?
Well, there are really three, as of late, three main drivers of country branding. And the first one is technology. People look at your technology. We really need to move into the new economy. We need to roll out broadband much faster. And the recent World Bank case study has actually shown that if you increase broadband penetration by 10%, GDP in developing countries goes up 1%. Now, I believe, I have proof for that we can increase broadband penetration from about 1.2 million South Africans currently by 50% by 2014 and increase GDP by 5%. By 2014. The other factor is the environment. We need to do a lot more for the green economy. That is very important. And the third factor is education. We need to make sure that we step up in terms of education, that we're the first country in Africa to really accomplish the one goal initiative of giving access to every child in the country and ultimately the continent to education and good education.
Out of those three, which do you think is the most important?
Clearly for economic development, broadband. There's no doubt technology and broadband, and I strongly believe that we can create 1 million netpreneurs on the continent by 2020.
Don't you think education should come before that, though?
Well, what is interestingly is that now in 2014, we will have the same, hopefully, the same broadband as Europe and the US, and by 2014, every second retail purchasing decision will be influenced by social media, what people see and read about your brand online. Now, Coca-Cola has based their entire strategy of doubling the business by 2020 on digital, on online, on content marketing. So when we talk about education, we need to educate the next generation, the youth specifically, about how to operate in the new economy.
Now, finally, what critical success factors are required for improved nation branding?
Well, what we need to do, we need to take back control of the country's brand image, and we need to profile what I call the hidden champions. And it was actually Madiba who once said, let us build a nation of champions. And I believe there are many hidden champions we can profile in business, in technology, in governance, the excellent teacher, the nurse that goes out of their way, the policeman that goes the extra mile. And that we need to do deliberately and as a national campaign.
And you clearly believe South Africa is capable of this, especially since you are a foreigner coming into our country.
Well, you see, the big difference and the big advantage, unfair or competitive advantage that South Africa has, we have a young population. Over half of this population is youth, and as compared to, for example, Germany, where you have 1/3 of the population being pensioners, this holds a huge opportunity. And we need to put a lot more emphasis, a lot more focus, and a lot more funds into youth development. And that's why I'm extremely positive about Vision 2020.
That was Dr. Nick Eberl, Brand-O-Vation and Linked Income CEO, discussing how investor confidence in South Africa can be improved.